It is Tuesday, September 15th, 2020, and this is your China Update. We have 4 pieces of information to cover today, including China puts Australia on notice over wheat exports. Also, courtesy of agriculture.com, grains, soybeans rise above $10 a bushel on Chinese demand. Corn at 5-month peak. We also have a couple of tweets from Chinese affiliated media and some new photos. Let's hop into it. And let's read this tweet from Chinese sponsored media before we get started. The National Bureau of Statistics announced that this year's summer grain production was 143 million tons, an increase of 1.21 million tons over the same period last year. The supply of China's 3 major cereals, wheat, rice, and corn, will still exceed demand in the 2020-2021 year. And one last tweet before we get started. This is courtesy of Global Times. It's the most abundant period in history for stocks of wheat and rice, and the ration supply is absolutely secure, said China's National Food and Strategic Reserves Administration. And this comes courtesy of abcnet.au. China puts Australia on notice over wheat exports. Australian wheat producers have been dragged into the growing political and trade tussle between Canberra and Beijing, after China warned it would put Australian exports under the microscope. In the latest sign of souring relations between the two countries, China's General Administration of Customs has issued a notice saying it will apply enhanced inspection efforts on shipments of Australian wheat. It comes at a delicate time for wheat growers, who are believed to have forward sold more than a dozen shipments to China for December and January, worth almost $250 million. In May, Australia's barley trade with China, once worth $1.6 billion a year, was all but destroyed after Beijing imposed crippling 80% tariffs. Nick Carricker, chief executive of Geelong-based Lockstock Consulting, said the decision by China was worrying given the value and volume of wheat already sold. He said the move appeared to be political, given China's need for feed grain and the dwindling nature of its own reserves. It also had echoes of Beijing's decision to reject barley shipments sent by giant grain handler CBH on grounds the vessels were contaminated with pests, he added. It's obviously going to be a huge concern to those people who have forward business in China, the implications for the vessels that haven't unloaded yet. But one thing that is very clear is that China has this increased willingness to scrutinize the vessels that are coming in. According to Mr. Carricker, while the Australian wheat trade with China had been smaller than exports of barley in recent years, activity had been picking up ahead of this year's harvest. Despite minimal flows last year in the face of severe drought in the eastern states, exports amounted to about $300 million in 2017-2018 and almost $500 million in 2016-2017. CBH, Australia's biggest grain handler, declined a request for an interview. Instead, the company issued a statement in which it said the CBH Group is confident that the grain we export from Western Australia meets all Australian export requirements, whether it's barley, wheat, or other products. Grain Producers Australia chairman Andrew Weidman said the news was no surprise given the events earlier this month. This is not unexpected that they would heighten their increased surveillance on any grain, or any producer really, transferring from Australia to China at the moment, Mr. Weidman said. I think the trade participants are well aware of the current political environment between Australia and China, and are looking to export grain as well as they can within tolerance. Mr. Weidman said it was always concerning when there were problems with trading partners, but he expected Australian grain arriving in China to meet quality controls. He said issues had previously arisen because of differences in sampling techniques, and suggested harmonizing the country's approaches could help avoid problems in the future. We have flagged doing a research project with the Chinese around that. Unfortunately, it's been lost with all the discussions we've been having recently around the trade of barley and tariffs between our two countries, he added. Thank you for watching this video. If you're finding it informative, please consider giving the channel a subscribe. And this comes courtesy of agriculture.com. Grains, soybeans rise above $10 a bushel on Chinese demand. Corn at 5-month peak. Chicago soybean prices gained for a second consecutive session on Monday, rising above $10 a bushel as Chinese buying and a lower estimate for U.S. production supported prices. Corn jumped to its highest since mid-March, while wheat ticked higher. On Friday, the U.S. Department of Agriculture said in a monthly report that U.S. corn and soybean production would be lower than previously expected because of unfavorable weather last month. U.S. crop outlook is bullish for corn and soybean prices, said Finn Zebel, agribusiness economist at National Australia Bank. We have also seen strong demand from China. Chinese demand for U.S. corn and soybeans remained strong in the latest week, USDA data showed, and traders expect the U.S. government to boost its export forecast for both commodities due to the recent surge of deals. In a report released on Friday, it showed that export sales of soybeans to China totaled 1.6 million tons in the week ending on September 3rd, the latest reporting period. Weekly corn export sales to China were 1.1 million tons. Ukraine has exported 9.2 million tons of grain so far this season, compared to the 10.3 million tons at the same point during the previous season, the Economy Ministry said on Friday. And our last piece of information is a series of interesting tweets. And I think that's a good place to wrap up today's video. I hope that you found it informative, and check back soon for more content.